So don't get focused just on working on one of these views, which can be very easy if you're working on it on this kind of exploded view. You want to go in and you want to make sure that your character looks good from all angles. So make sure that when you're working, especially if you're working in the perspective view, just to grab it and just take a spin around your character. See that everything's looking really, really nice. And it's really, really easy to get focused sometimes just in these other views. So just to make sure that that doesn't happen, try to get in the habit of jumping in and out. We're getting a lag there. You'll notice sometimes when you hit the smooth preview that things lose a lot of their volume. So we just go in there and again eyeball that stuff. It'll lose less volume the more faces that you actually put in there. Okay. So we're going along. We're modeling this guy. We can continue maybe even building his torso. Build it up, grab some of those vertices. Again, kind of pull them out. So what happens if you want to maybe add some more edges in there and you're using your Insert Edge Loop tool, but you don't necessarily want that tool to go all the way around your character? Well, we have a handy another little tool there called Split Polygon Tool. So basically what this is it's a little bit more precise control other than that Insert Edge Loop. So we just click on an edge, you can see it makes a little dot, and then we can drag that wherever, and that's going to be the starting point where we're going to be cutting. So usually when you guys use this stuff, you want to make sure that you drop it into another vertex. So you just drag it down, click, release, and keep on going. That just keeps your mesh a little bit cleaner, stops you from creating end sides and other kinds of weird geometry. And we've got a couple of faces here that were created by the extrude. Not a big deal. We can just select them, hit delete, away they go. So then we can use that stuff to sculpt a little bit more, have his chest if we need to. So maybe we use that to suck that in. We can pull that out a little bit. And we can start shaping our dude. So that's basically how we go about building a character. It's just going in, cutting those faces, adding more, doing our extrudes. It's just time and effort, and just going in there and really, really, really working on some of those little areas. We could put in a little bit more muscle definition in there. So basically what happens is our character turns out gray. So I've got one that's a little bit further along. So let's just go and grab some of that. So the next part of it is taking our character. Again, this is what our end result is going to be. Taking that character, and here he is, after all that modeling process, he comes out a nice kind of flat gray. So he doesn't have a lot of the life or a lot of the personality that our guy over here has. So again, same guy, here he's all just kind of gray, drab. So how does he get from this to this? Well, we have to paint textures on here using Photoshop. So before we get to actually painting textures, we have to lay this guy out so he's paintable, so that the program can make him look the way it is, or that we can take this 2D representation and put it into a dimension that we can paint. So basically the way I like to think about it, we got to make this guy into a bearskin rug. So we got to take this guy and we got to lay him out flat. To do that, we have to use our UV editor. So if you want to take a look at the UVs for this guy, we can go edit UVs, UV texture editor, comes up with this. Now this isn't exactly how it looks like. I kind of fake these ones, but usually it's just a whole bunch of overlapping puzzle pieces, or it looks like a spider web. So basically we have to get this into some sort of flat representation that we can paint, and then that Maya can then wrap around the character. So we got some tools to do that. We can use our Create UVs. So Create UVs, I'm going to just bust this map off a little bit just by hitting those 3 bars, put this over here in front so it's floating. So we have access to a couple of our main UV items. So usually how I like to start this stuff off as is just doing a planar map straight from the front. A lot of people, I've seen they'll do an automatic mapping. It breaks into these little parts. Sometimes it's tough to tell what some of these parts are. Obviously, these are maybe some toes or some feet going on. That looks like his front. But when we get into little pieces like this, it becomes very, very hard to say paint that and know what that is. So we want to put this into something that humans can read. Computer knows what it is, but we don't. And typically, we'll want to go in and do some editing or something else. So we have to know what is what. So I like to take this guy, just select him again, and do a planar map. So I take it, go in, and I take a look at what's facing us the most. In this case, it's the front of his body. Take a look at my compass. That's along the z-axis. So boom, hit that bounding box, and I want to keep the ratio. Just hit project, and pretty much we get our guy looking like our guy. Right now, if I went and painted this, if I painted on his chest, that same image would come up on his back right now, but just because he's been compressed completely. So what I want to do is I want to do the bearskin rug thing, cut him up, cut him open, lay things out flat. So we do that just by going in, selecting a couple edges, and it's nice if you have your edges set up really, really well. You can see that they flow, and if you double click, it really wants to select that edge loop. So we can use this to kind of split apart in key areas. So I'm just doing a double click, and that's one continuous line. So then I can go in here, cut it. It's a lot like making a t-shirt too. And if you want to see some of those lines on your 3D model, you can go toggle texture borders. It's going to make them a little bit thicker. You can see right there in areas that we have those cuts in. So just going through this model really quickly. You can think of it as maybe cutting your character into a t-shirt as well. So just going in here, making some of these cuts. Again, just selecting the edge. If you select something that you don't want, you can always do a control click. Sometimes you can exploit those edge loops, so I'm wildly off here. So let's just kind of fix this up a little bit from that other line that I was making. So just defining those lines again. And then just going Shift, UVs. And basically what that allows us to do then, just open this guy up a little bit more, is we can select these by the UVs. And you can see here I can detach his arm. So here we are, Maya crashed. This guy might look a little bit different than the one I was showing you before, but again, same thing happened. Did some cutting. Let me just turn on those toggle texture borders. So basically what we end up doing is a lot like our moms or grandparents did. So we just cut this up into basically a shirt or like hunters and unwrap this guy, and it's just giving me a whole load of problems. There we go. So we start cutting around those edges, and you can see that we can start pulling this apart. So I'm just going to isolate, say, this guy's arm again, and I'll just do the upper body torso area for you. So same thing here, we're just going along, selecting the edges that we want to cut along, that we want to use our scissors on. Again, if we have some nice geometry in there, we should be able to double click and it'll grab the edge loops for us. So just going through here, grab that, cut the UVs again, and if it doesn't come off, it's because there's a little piece of something holding it back. So just making sure that everything around there is grabbed, go back to UVs, move that guy off to the side, and I'm just going to chop this dude's head off. So this looks as good as place as any. Usually when you're doing UVs, you want to put them kind of out of sight or easy to blend in areas, because it is where you might see the textures butt up to each other. So usually putting them in like logical places where you would expect seams, so if it was a shirt along the seam lines, are going to be a little bit less noticeable.